Hello, my name is Gigi Berardi and I am the author of FoodWISE, a whole systems guide to sustainable and delicious food choices. The book was released in January of 2020 and I had events scheduled, a dozen events scheduled in New York City and in Los Angeles, in Seattle, in Vancouver, British Columbia, and also in Western Washington, where I live. And so I am recording this in late March, and in early March of 2020, it became obvious that coronavirus was hitting us hard in the United States. And slowly but surely, events started to get canceled. Of course, that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is that people are out of work. People are out of their homes. People are homeschooling their children, and that is not necessarily a problem, but they may not have planned very well for that. So we are all coping with the aftermath of lifestyle changes with coronavirus. But really, coronavirus is one of many threats to us and to our food system. So when I wrote FoodWISE, I had the idea to make WISE an acronym, and it stands for whole, the W for whole, so that's whole systems, whole foods. I for information, for being informed, because there's so much information about food and food choices that is difficult to understand, much less wade through. S for sustainable, so that food and food systems should be sustainable ecologically and economically, and that includes sustainable in terms of our own personal budgets. The last letter in the acronym WISE is E, and that is for experience, but it's also for empathy. And all of us are getting a lot of experience now dealing with a major threat, coronavirus, and our loss of mobility and access to resources. But I also very much like the E for empathy too, because empathy is trying to put ourselves, not that we can be so presumptuous, but to put ourselves in the shoes, in the place of others, in trying to understand their challenges in terms of access to resources. So the book does focus on food, but also I wrote another book 15 years ago called Finding Balance, and that book was about some of the same ideas applied to dancers, but not just. In that book, I tackled ideas of adaptive capacity to threats, and the threat there was primarily one of perfection, of being obsessed with ideas of perfection and ideals, an ideal body size, an ideal body type, and ideal body movement that perhaps none of us can achieve. Some of the ideas are still the same as in FoodWISE, and I advocated then for experience, the important role that experience plays in developing our practical wisdom, which is so important to have as we're facing these various crises in the world. And the way in which we get practical wisdom is through experience. It's the way university administrators become better administrators, doctors become better doctors, teachers become better teachers, judges become wiser judges in terms of doing one thing, and that is doing the right thing. So this was never more important than now in terms of doing the right thing for ourselves, but also for and by each other too. So food is what I've been focusing on more recently, and of course that is the focus of FoodWISE. But before FoodWISE came out, I wrote other articles too with a colleague, Rebecca Pachi-Green, that looked at threats to the U.S. food system. One of the big threats was subsidies. Too much subsidies for some commodities, and not enough for other kinds of more resilient food systems. Or in another article, we posited a big threat in the area in which I live, Western Washington, and that was a subduction zone earthquake. Given a subduction zone earthquake where Interstate 5 would be taken out, this is very specific to where I'm living, and Rebecca, what would happen to food? In what ways are we resilient so that we could withstand a major threat like that? And then what are some ways forward in terms of becoming more resilient? So I'd like to invite you to look at those pieces and the most recent work, FoodWISE.